Hello guys, my name is Gavin, and this will be a video on how to use a ray sensor in conjunction with melee combat to apply force to an object. I will be using a little bit of Python, and I'm just going to get started. So to start off, what we're going to do is double click the A button until everything is selected and hit X and delete. Hit 1 to go into front view and do spacebar and then add a camera like this. I'm going to drag this camera back and drag it up just a little bit. And with our camera selected, let's do object, snap, and cursor to selected. And hit spacebar and then add a cube like this. So we should see a cube is now at the base of our camera. Scale this cube down just a little bit and drag it in front of the camera like this. I'm going to rename this cube that we just created. I'm going to rename it as ray object like this. And I'm going to right click and shift on the camera with our ray object selected and hit Control and P to parent it. Alright. So I'm going to right click on this ray object really quick, and I'm going to go from defaults to game logic and go from Blender render to Blender game. Hit 0 to go into our camera view, and what we're going to do is we're going to add an always sensor on our ray object. We're going to add a ray sensor. This will be ray, and for the range, let's say 20. We're going to look for the property enemy on this ray sensor, and we're going to minimize this for now. Let's now add a message sensor. This message will be let's say attack. I'm going to click tap and minimize this, or not minimize this, but put the message attack in here. Minimize this as well. And let's add a Python controller and connect these. Let's now do templates, Python, and then game logic simple. I'm going to delete the portion I've highlighted right here and hit Control and scroll up on your mouse and make your text larger. Ray object script will be what I name this. Ray object.py. I'm going to add this right here. And I'm just going to do this section. Actually, for now, let's just define our ray sensor. So ray equals const.sensors ray. Then attack is going to equal const.sensors attack. That. But now what we're going to do is go into a new scene. Or let's create a new scene by doing this plus sign right here. Hit the new. I'm going to rename the scene as melee scene. Melee combat, actually. Bats, like that. Hit 1 to go into front view in our new scene and do spacebar and then add a camera. We should have a camera that we just created. Actually, we can leave that back in the middle. I'm going to now create a melee weapon, so let's make a cube. So spacebar and then add a cube like this. Hit S to scale it down. Drag it off in front. Hit S and Z to scale it up vertically. Hit 3 to go into our side view. Minimize it just a little bit like that. And we should see that if I drag it off to this corner, we have a simple melee weapon. But as you can see, we can only rotate it around the middle. We want to rotate it around the base. So I'm going to go from object mode to edit mode with our melee weapon selected. Hit the face select mode right here and right click on the base. And do mesh, snap, and cursor to selected. Go back into object mode and do object, transform, origin 3D cursor. And if we see, we can rotate it like this now. Alright. I'm going to hit 0 to go into our camera view. I'm going to go into defaults. And I'm going to go to melee combat because we want to actually animate this now. So, we're going to set the end frame as frame 6. And on the start frame, on frame 1, so make sure these both have 1. Let's do I lock rotation. Set this to frame 6. And do I lock rotation. Then on frame 3, down here, so set this to frame 3. I'm going to go into the side view. I'm going to rotate this down like this. And do I lock rotation. So we should see this will be our melee combat action. That's kind of weird, but it'll work. So, let's now go back into our game logic view. Now on our cube right here, I'm going to add an always sensor. I'm going to add a mouse sensor, rename this as click tap, and minimize this. Add a Python controller and select and connect these like so. And let's add an action actuator. I'll name this as melee action, like this. I'm going to add the cube action down here and go from frame 1 to frame 6 because that was our melee combat range, and connect these. Let's now create a script for our melee combat, so templates, Python, and the game logic simple. And delete the portion I've highlighted right here. So I'm just going to rename this as melee.py. I'm going to connect this like this. So I'm going to define our click sensor and our melee action actuator. So click is going to equal const.sensors click. Melee action is going to equal const.sensors or actuators. Melee action, like so. Yep. What we're going to do now is have if click.positive. We are going to const.activates melee action. We're going to send the message attack. Attack, like this. So we should see if I hit P to play, I can click and that'll show up right here. And the reason we send that message attack is that we want it to read within our other script in our main scene. So actually I'm now going to go back into my main scene. I'm going to right click on my camera. I'm going to add an always sensor. And click those first 3 dots. Add a scene actuator and overlay the scene, the melee combat scene, into the game. Melee combat. So we should see we now have this. Alright, that is good. Actually, after this, I'm just going to print attack like this. This is just a message to make sure my code is working. It is. Alright. That'll work. Okay. Now let's go back on, let's right click back on this cube object right here. Add array and go back into our array object script. You can now see that we've on our message attack right here. We've got that attack message, which is why we sent it from the other one. So what we're going to do now is have if array.positive, positive. We're going to have targets is going to equal array.hitObject. And if attack.positive, or if the player has attacked, we're going to set 2 variables. We're going to have force is going to equal 0, 300, 0. Local is going to equal true. Then we're going to do targets.apply force, local. Right? That's the main reason why we created this up here, is it's essentially saying 3 coordinates and then true. Alright. So I'm going to drag this in really quick if I can grab this. Yeah, there we go. I'm now going to add a plane into our game. So use spacebar and then add a plane. Drag this down and hit S and then 10. Hit 7 to go in the top view and drag this forward like this. I'm now going to add a cube into our game. So spacebar and then add a cube. This cube will be the most stereotypical enemy ever, with being red. So it is a red cube like this. And the physics on our cube, so click on the physics tab, will be rigid body. And make sure actor is selected. And this cube will have a property enemy. So if you remember on our array object sensor, like this, and select it, array object sensor. Our array sensor will find objects within the range of 20. That'll be an enemy, and it will and that's what's going to instigate this little line of code right here. So if I hit P to play, we should see that when you hit it, it's going to push the cube forward. Actually, I'm going to right click on this I'm going to right click on our array object right here. And I'm going to make it invisible like this. Then I'm going to go back in the solid view. So as you can see, every time I might actually I'll make the plane invisible too. The plane will be invisible. It'll still be there, but it'll just be invisible. Go back into solid view. You can see every single time I tap this, it's gonna push that cube like this. And it's kind of like your player is hitting the game object or the enemy object. And I rotate it just a hair on the x-axis. And you can see that if you just keep hitting it, it'll just keep moving. And if you wanted to make the force a lot more powerful, you can just go back into your scripts. I can't appear to open. And I'm going to put this at like 3,000. You can see if I hit it now, it's just going to go flying. Alright guys, so that's how you apply force in conjunction with melee combat to an object in Blender. I hope you found this useful.